Hi, my name is Chris and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk about the M1 Max Macbook Pro and whether you can actually use it with Premiere Pro. Now, I've been using this M1 Max Macbook Pro for about 3 weeks now, and I've been using it extensively with Premiere Pro because that's my video editor of choice. Famously, Premiere Pro isn't exactly optimized for Macs, let alone the M1 chip. So apps like Final Cut and DaVinci Resolve generally perform better. And spoiler alert, I do think this now is the MacBook that you should be using if you want to use Premiere Pro on a Mac. So the 16-inch M1 Max MacBook I've been using is the 10-core CPU, the 32-core GPU, 32 gigabytes of RAM and a terabyte of SSD. So it's a generic one that you can get on the actual Apple website. Personally, I upgraded to this MacBook because I always have a desktop and laptop set up. I've upgraded recently to the Sony a7S III. I've been filming a ton of 10-bit 4K footage and my Razer laptop just cannot handle it. So I needed something that could handle it just as well as my desktop PC could. Now, even though I've owned the 13-inch MacBook, a 15-inch MacBook and the 16-inch MacBook, I've never really enjoyed using Macs for video editing. Like I mentioned earlier, Premiere Pro has never really been great on Macs. There's always performance issues and different problems. And unless you build a multi-$1,000 Mac Pro, you're never going to get that same performance as if you actually built a custom PC, which again is what I decided to do eventually. So I'm coming from a Windows background, so just bear that in mind when I say anything good about this laptop, because I know I'm going to get called a fanboy at the end of this video. So let's get into something which I thought was pretty boring when I was just watching YouTube reviews about stuff, and I'd often skip the bit about this, but it's battery life. Now, battery life, even though people have been saying it's quite good on the 16-inch M1s, I actually was incredibly surprised by it. I've been sat here editing on Premiere Pro for sometimes full days, and the battery life has lasted like 4-5 hours maybe. I'll sit here in the morning, I'll edit on Premiere Pro, then I'll plug it in for about an hour at lunchtime, and that will last me till the end of the day with different things like editing, sending emails, doing Photoshop, thumbnails, that kind of thing. I guess that's a bit of a trivial thing if you used to just plug in a MacBook in and docking it on your desk for 99% of the time, but if you're like me and sometimes you have to edit photos and videos and wedding sort of footage on the go, then battery life is a huge plus of this laptop. Now let's get into performance, and you only have to watch my last video to see how well this M1 Max actually performs when editing in Premiere Pro. It actually matched and sometimes outperformed my custom built PC with a 3070 graphics card and a high-end CPU, which is pretty nuts considering how big this thing is and that this Mac is a laptop. Projects open blazing fast, scrubbing is so quick, and you can easily play back 10-bit 422 4K footage, multiple layers, adjustment layers, that kind of thing in 2 times speed with no problem whatsoever, which is pretty crazy from a device like this. Scrubbing and playback is a little bit better in the latest version of Premiere Pro, which as of this video is just Premiere Pro 22. But there's a glitch at the moment with Premiere 22 where if you've got a particularly long file and you try and play it back at 2 times, it just crashes. That's the same on the PC as well, so it's not just a Mac thing, but just bear that in mind. So I've been using the older version of Premiere to test this. So my tests on the other video were with the internal SSD, which is one of the fastest SSDs out there, and honestly, I recommend if you're buying one of these to upgrade the SSD if it fits in with your workflow. For me, all of these tests and what I'm telling you right now is all based on testing from a SanDisk SSD. So obviously it's going to be a little bit slower than editing from the internal hard drive, but it's still very, very quick. Personally, I didn't upgrade the internal storage because it doesn't fit in with my workflow. I edit from hard drives because I switch between the PC and the Mac quite a lot. If you're trying to deal with ProRes, bear in mind it's going to be a little bit slower. Even though these Macs do have the ProRes encoders in them, Premiere Pro doesn't actually take advantage of it yet as of the making of this video. You can download the beta, which apparently they're working on taking advantage of those decoders, but it doesn't actually make a huge difference at this moment in time. To be quite honest, this is a bit where I normally say the things I don't like about the product, but there's not been a hell of a lot of things that I don't like, so just bear with me, these things are going to be quite small. So firstly is USB cable problems when connecting an external SSD. I've been using these Anchor USB cables for quite a while now to connect my SSDs to my PC, and it works absolutely fine. But as soon as I've used them to connect to the Mac, it starts sort of playing up, ejects the SSD and just doesn't play ball at all. So I've ended up having to use the USB-C cables that came with the external SSD, the SanDisk SSD. So just something to bear in mind, that maybe your cables won't work. There was one time when I opened Premiere Pro and none of my wavelengths for audio were in my project file, which made it quite difficult to cut and edit certain bits, but a quick restart of Premiere Pro solved that quite easily. And of course, the dreaded memory leak bug. Again, I've had the MacBook for about 3 weeks now, and I've only had this bug twice. Basically, what happens is if you're editing in Premiere Pro, you get a pop-up just saying that you're using too much RAM. If this does pop up, this isn't something you're doing wrong, it's just a glitch within macOS at the moment, and you can actually just close the pop-up and carry on editing. So it's not a huge problem, but it's still something that's a little bit worrying at times. Finally, if you're like me, you use a software called Pluralize to sync up all your footage, and then you just import the XML into Premiere Pro. At the moment, Pluralize isn't working, at least on my M1 Mac, so just bear that in mind. So at the moment, my workflow is using Pluralize on the PC, exporting the XML, and then importing it with the Mac. But again, another thing that surprises me is it does all of this with no fan noise and barely any heat, to be honest. I've only heard the fan noise go off like twice, maybe 3 times in the few weeks I've owned it, and that's only when I've been pushing it in Premiere Pro. So I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal that it was quiet, but it's actually been really nice to edit through the speakers and not have that constant droning that I get from my PC. And also, anyone who's edited on an old MacBook before will know that it sounds like it's going to take off every time you open Google Chrome. So it's really nice now to be able to do all that stuff in complete silence. And now you can actually finally use a laptop for editing on your lap. Anyone who's used older MacBook will know that it does get really, really hot. With this laptop, it never really gets that hot, so you can finally edit just sat on the sofa on your lap. Just a couple of things now that aren't essential but definitely made the cut. That SD card slot is definitely a welcome addition. It's nice just to be able to take the laptop out, not worrying about any dongles or anything, and it's really fast in terms of transfer speeds as well. The next thing is the speakers, and sometimes I do like to edit just using the speakers if I don't want to put headphones on. And these speakers must be some of the best quality laptop speakers in 2021. I don't have much to compare it to, but these are actually A grade. So bear that in mind, you know, these speakers are top quality, as they always are on MacBooks, to be fair. And finally, the keyboard is very comfortable, easy to use. I can literally use it all day. The touch bar is gone, so RIP, easy access to emojis, but I think most people will actually be happy to see the back of it. So is this laptop actually good for video content creators and editing in Premiere Pro? The short answer is yes. This would be great for content creators and videographers of all shapes and sizes, and it must be one of the best laptops you can get in 2021 right now for video editing. But whether you actually need it is debatable, so I would consider these things before buying. Are you set on Premiere Pro? If not, then you can obviously switch over to Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve as other options, and these actually run better on the M1 Max, so you could downgrade to the M1 Pro, not have to get the M1 Max and save a bit of money. The other thing is, do you actually need a laptop? Part of the reason these things are so pricey is because they're laptops. You could actually build a custom PC for a lot less than this M1 Max MacBook and get the same performance. So consider whether you need it to be portable or not. But if you're using Premiere Pro, you want a laptop, and you're going to make the most of the power by editing 10-bit 4K 422 footage, and you want that to be smooth, then this is definitely a very suitable laptop for that purpose. So that's been it from me. I'm sorry this has been a bit of a talking heavy video. There's not really much to show at the end of the day. It's just a laptop and everyone's seen the Premiere Pro screen. You've all seen the MacBook Pro B-roll, etc. in other videos. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you have, then hit that thumbs up button. If you want to see more videos about content creation and video creating on the go, then do subscribe. And if you've got any questions or comments about the MacBook, then leave them down below in the comment section and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.